That seems like enough time, right? We're probably live.
I think we're live. Yeah, we're
We
live.
must be. All right. Hello, everyone.
Hello.
And there we are. We are live. Look at that. Welcome to What Not to Wear in Space. And it does look a little crooked on my screen. I'm not fixing it. All right. Well, I'm Lilit, as many of you know. And this is Christelle. Introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Christelle. That's it.
And today we're going to talk about fashion in Star Wars.
There's so much to talk about, but I think we've limited it down to as much as we can.
Yeah, I think we've done a good job. So first up, this is a good list of the costume designers for all the various movies. We are not really going to get into them personally that much. I just felt like listing them all out there. I think John Molo for episode 4 and 5 is the only one I will reference again. Most of them, they did their jobs, but I felt like listing them.
It's always good to give sources and credit.
Yeah, and I do think it's a little neat that like 1, 2, and 3 and 7, 8, 9 all like each respectively had one single fashion lead, whereas like 4 and 5 is one, but then episode 6 is two other people, and then like Rogue One and Solo were led by the same two costume designers. I think that's like a fun little thing to keep in mind.
It gives you kind of an interesting look at how you can keep consistency across episodes, issues, whatever the words that aren't there, versus
Yeah.
to like 6 does have a slightly different feel from the others. So that's the end of that sentence. I just end
Yep.
so really bad.
And then we're mostly going to start with the influences and inspiration for classic Star Wars fashion. Up first, traditional Asian clothing, especially Japanese. I think this is most apparent in the Jedi robes. And there's a few things that Padme wears that you can really see that in. And some of it gets a little iffy. Well, iffy, and we'll talk about that later.
There's a few that go a little past iffy, but
there's a few that just go straight all the way there. But definitely the Jedi robes, you can see the influence. However, they kind of changed some stuff up of making the robes bigger, making the crossover into more of a tabard than a shirt, different pants, just knee-high boots, because why not?
protect the shins. It's good.
I guess, yeah.
And it's fashion.
And then we have military, especially World War I and World War II German, because John Molo, the fashion designer for episodes 4 and 5, has, before becoming a costume designer, had a huge interest in military uniforms, especially for German military uniforms. Like, I think he wrote some books on military uniforms. And I think especially with the Empire uniforms, you see that.
I mean, there's a direct correlation between the outfit inspiration, the costume inspiration, and the what they represent as a whole.
Yes.
So.
That I think especially with the hat shape and just so much of it, it's definitely very very reminiscent of Nazi officer uniforms.
You didn't know that the Empire is sort of like space Nazis.
It's right
really
there.
Big visual cue.
They really tried to let you know, and not just that, but they called them stormtroopers.
And the fact that people somehow still seem to miss this is mind-boggling. But anyway,
I will never be more confused than when people say Star Wars isn't meant to be political, and I'm like, but like you can see in the slide right there, those uniforms.
it's
So
direct.
Hugo Boss, like, which yeah. So if anyone is not aware, the Hugo Boss, the fashion designer, fashion house, had a huge hand in making Nazi officer uniforms during the war. And so like that's a big thing. I mean, honestly, a lot of those old fashion designers were very bad. But you can also sort of see in the World War I face mask over here how that very much parallels Vader's mask and sort of that like helmet shape. There's a lot of influence there. Then we start getting into Westerns.
Space Western.
Like, look at all these good boys and there are too many belt buckles.
Are there too many belt buckles? Can that be such a thing?
I guess not. But they
According to
got some
fantasy, no, but
good jackets and vests, and then even some capes going on.
a
No
lot of
hats,
leather.
really,
No,
besides Cad Bane.
Cad's the only one who gives us that good Western hat.
He really is.
More Cad Bane, please.
More Cad Bane. But especially with The Mandalorian. Like, The Mandalorian is very much leaning into that spaced Western trope.
I hope they keep leaning that way. I'm worried about season 2, but
Yeah, they're announcing a lot of characters for that. Hopefully they stick with the idea. But they do love putting their leading men in Western looks. And I'm here for it.
I'm right there with you.
And then one of the most obvious ones, sci-fi inspirations.
Gee, where did that come from?
I don't know. It's almost like they're in space. I mean,
Huh.
really, we're all in space if you think about it.
They're in different cities.
Yes. Uh, but obviously, the droids, look at them, they're good. But they're very heavily based off of like 50s, 60s sci-fi films.
You recall what the sources of that fantastic one down on the bottom next to Bosk? Because that's just such a
Oh, I
correlation.
don't remember the little
Nope.
bubble R2D2 kind of
Oh,
one.
the guy who looks directly like Bosk. Like they
Oh,
just
that is from a Doctor Who episode. And they
oh,
are wearing the same uniform. They directly borrowed the uniform. It was a 19 there was a trivia question about this last night. I believe it's a 1966 episode for Doctor Who, and they just took the outfit because they still had it and put Bosk into it.
fantastic. I love that.
And I just think that's really fun that they were just like, oh, just raid Doctor Who. I'm sure they have something. But I feel like a lot of Star Wars fashion is not as futuristic spacey as a
No,
lot of other sci-fi. It's mostly
it
through the droids.
it leans a lot more into like a grungy aesthetic, a broken down aesthetic instead of going
Yeah.
sleek shapes like we've got on that Metropolis. I think that's Metropolis, right?
Yes.
The original Macquarie designs for C3PO are so sexy, so sleek. And while
Yeah.
I'm never gonna bash on our little anxiety boy, I do wish they'd gone with that more sleek look for him.
Yeah, I kind of didn't start going into some of the original concept art because I have a lot of it from some exhibitions I've seen. We were not going to have the time.
No,
There'd just be no way to go through all of them and like what Yoda was supposed to look like and all the different.
not if we want to talk about the ridiculous topic I want to talk about. So
No, the original concept art is like it's a whole panel in itself. And then there's also a surprising amount of Viking-esque sword and sorcery, especially in episode 6.
a lot of that classic barbarian.
The heavy shoulder like capulets and leather and weird teeth things coming out of masks, and especially the Ewoks and whatever they put Leia in,
Oh,
which
that one is so bad.
also you gotta question why they had that.
Um,
Like,
well, I
mm,
always assumed it was taken off of somebody else they ate. So they just had a collection of material to resource from people that they ate, and that one happened to fit her.
yeah, I figured, but I kind of want to see the Ewoks as cute and not, you know,
I love them more for being murder bears.
they are very cute, but they are carnivores, so we gotta keep that in mind. And then up next, the fucking gold bikini. I mean, this is probably like one of the most famous outfits,
It's
but I
God,
hate it so much.
about it, but I hate it so
And
much.
they put so much effort into this. Like, it has its own Wikipedia article, and that's
Of course
bad.
it is.
But as you can see over on the side here, we have Carrie Fisher as Leia in the gold bikini. It's not even really that gold, but like it's there. And then the inspiration that the costume designers directly talked about. Uh, a big one is Frank Frazetta art. Uh, if you're in a lot of like old school RPG D&D stuff, you'll have seen his art. And you'll see it when see a lot of really buff dudes and naked women.
Naked women.
Like, you got to commend him because he did accurately draw anatomy and like would include things like cellulite and body rolls, and like
I
that's
look at this and I love her because she doesn't have
yeah.
unattainable or genetically
Yeah.
less perfect weird ab thing going on. Like she looks real.
Yeah, like it is one thing I like about his art is that the women do look realistic, and especially like he'll give them flaws and that's nice, but at the same time he kind of only ever draws them naked
Yeah.
or with such tiny little bikinis that they might as well be naked.
I'm at
So
least impressed to see that they took the inspiration art and somehow added a little bit more fabric in places. I mean, I know some of
yeah.
that's sponsors, but when your first exposure is just that gold bikini, and then you find out, I'm like, oh, that's actually adding more fabric than.
Yeah. um and a lot of people like to be like, oh well, it's feminist because then she killed Jabba. Like, yeah, but she could have also killed Jabba with more clothing, and the actual outfit was really uncomfortable for Carrie to wear. And apparently, a lot of the men on set thought that was super funny and would like to joke about how uncomfortable it was for her and how it didn't really cover her from all angles and how that was super funny to them. And that's just really gross. I
That's
don't
so
feel like you should subject your actresses to that kind of stuff unless you have like a legit talk with them about like if they're comfortable with it or not. And you should make it as comfortable for them as possible.
And I know Carrie had talked a lot about feeling like she had to lose so much weight for this movie
Yeah.
because of this stupid bikini and having to fit in, being so aware, and then the pressures that put on her throughout the rest of her life to maintain that image.
Yeah. Like there's just a lot of that even still today where just the awful unrealistic outfits, and you'll see that again with some of the Padme stuff of once Natalie Portman was old enough, they start showing her stomach.
All the time. All the time.
And some of the outfits get cut, but like that's just kind of gross. They're like the moment they were like legally allowed to show more skin, they do, and that's just kind of gross
You
and
can
bad.
tell even official pictures, she looks so uncomfortable. But we can wait to talk about Padme a little bit longer.
Oh, yeah.
A little bit longer.
Next up, we just have capes.
Because they're fabulous.
They're fabulous. They're fun. And I think Star Wars doesn't overuse them. But I think they add them where they need some extra dramatic flair.
I think they do a fabulous job of adding it in for dramatic flair. And I know the capes partially come from a 70s aesthetic, but I think they're used as such a great emphasis for moments.
Yeah, like you definitely see the 70s flair with Lando.
That's the
So
polyester. I mean,
yeah, so we have a young Lando and an older Lando and the cape closet. And those are definitely much more 70s. But oh, and especially Kira's like the red cape. The color blocking on it is very nice, and I think it adds a lot of fun dramatic flair.
This is one time when Edna Mode is completely wrong.
Definitely. I think it also matters that most of these characters are not physically flying through the air. So the top left in the red cape, that's Kira from Solo.
That's one of my favorite outfits from that entire movie.
Yeah, she doesn't get as many outfits as I'd like, but the ones she has, I definitely like.
That one has so many layers to it, which is a little hard to see in that photo, but between this dramatic red cape with the black sort of collar and top to it, layered over this fantastic white
there's not much
motorcycle offset zipper. Well, not a zipper, excuse me, piping, because there's no zippers in Star Wars.
No zippers.
To the off-slung belt over, I think it's sort of like a pants and tunic-y skirt combo. It just has so many layers. I'm like, that is a way to do a capsule wardrobe. You could just take off different pieces and mix and match. But even all together, it's just such a huge dramatic oomph.
It's a very good one. And then, of course, like you have Vader, and the cape just adds such a dramatic evil overlord flair to it.
And Krennic's sad attempt to replicate that.
Trying to be an extra evil overlord and just not quite getting there.
No. I mean, his coat doesn't have enough volume to it, or his cloak doesn't have enough volume, not enough length. The white doesn't work. He tried to, bless him.
The white cape with the white top, but then black pants. Like you need to use color blocking to your advantage and create the shapes you want. And color blocking all white until like mid hip, and then black color just sort of creates weird proportions.
Maybe he wanted to feel like he was floating. Like he was just a torso and pelvis, I guess. I don't know. It's kind of an odd thought.
Just kind of floating.
Yeah. Maybe he really just wanted to be a droid.
Maybe. And next we have just some random favorites that didn't really fit anywhere else, but we still wanted to talk about a little bit. And yep, there's Holdo.
I'm sorry. I'm going to love Hodel to death.
I love her.
Multiple reasons. First of all, if you just take her gown design from a purely aesthetic, it's gorgeous. It is amazing. It's inspired by, I think, I can never say his name right. Izzy Miyake, I believe, is the designer. The level of detail that has gone into it. And what I also love is putting somebody in her position of power in a beautiful gown. I know there's a lot of people who hate Hodel, and I'm not going to go into why they're wrong.
They are wrong, though.
Why they're so wrong. But putting somebody in a position of power, in a position of leadership, who's still allowed to wear gowns, still allowed to be feminine.
And soft
and soft and beautiful, and not having to be a position of power based on only dressing like a man.
Exactly. And
And
I love the color palette.
Puce
Uh,
is such a
the,
gutsy choice.
the puce with like the mauve lilac lavender hair is, it's not a combination I think I would ever think to do, but I really like it in combo and with the silver accessories.
Yes, it's hard to see. You can see kind of in the portrait shot down on her, but she even has this awesome sort of. It's supposed to be the rings of the moons of. Uh, I'm gonna say the planet wrong. Galentia. I can't say it. Um, but I love that. I love that she even still just goes full on out and says, "Yeah, I'm an admiral. So what? I'm gonna wear my cool tiara thing."
And I also think uh kind of bringing how character costumes are often symbolic for the plot. The fact that it resembles kind of a halo does mirror the fact that she later sacrifices herself for the cause. And like that's kind of like some stuff you got to think about with the costumes. And like right next to her is good old Luke in
Oh, Luke.
his little, so dramatic, metaphorical outfit of the black tight neck top that then flaps away to show that, oh, well, there's really good underneath as he's having this fight to kill his father.
I think this is the. Is this probably the largest fan favorite outfit for Luke across the series?
This might be. Like, I definitely see this one a lot. Uh, I would say it would either be this or just the original outfit he's in at the start of A New Hope.
The white,
The
rough,
white tunic, yeah.
his farm boy roots.
Yep. Just all sorts of symbolism in the outfits.
I'm so surprised you have a picture of that that doesn't show his famous Chanel boots, though.
I couldn't find a good one that was like full length that wasn't like an artist's rendition of it.
I'm
I
crying.
just I was so sad because I wanted the whole outfit, but it was either like super low quality image femme fatale thing that they were bringing in.
Which
Because
is
again, symbolism for characters and how their plot lines end up.
that's the
But
best thing about costuming is when we see that parallel between hints or subtle nods that directly relate to the plot, or like you mentioned, the halo for Holdo that are sort of a what is the word I want? Foreshadowing.
yeah, yes. And then I also threw in one of the Praetorian guards from The Last Jedi, and I think they look like big old red Tic Tacs in like the best way possible. Like that's not an insult. Like I really like the sort of toy guard Alice in Wonderland feeling to them.
They do have a
And
sort of cartoony menace to them that
yeah,
fits Snoke so well.
I think it fits the scene. I don't want to see them anywhere else in media, but like that one scene, I think having very faceless toy guard villains to fight fits. Because it's not really about them fighting the guards. It's about Rey and Kylo working together. So not having like a real face to put the villain in kind of like helps you focus on their connection.
Exactly.
Oh no, actually, like, if I was going to be an elite guard and that's the outfit they gave me, I'd be super cool with that. I'd be like, this has a theme to it. Like, I know what we're doing.
Oh, Curse of Stew. Yes, I am in Cloud City. Good eye.
And then we
Jin.
also have a Jin. Gotta love that layering.
I love the layering again. I think for these characters who are heroic but you're ragtag rebels, I think that layering is the best because it suits looks, it suits environment, allows them to change up as they need. I also like some of the callbacks that I feel to your classic Han Solo outfit with the pants. She doesn't have the blood stripe, but the tailoring of the pants, this whole outfit is just fantastic.
Yeah. And get a lot of those Western influences of the slightly morally ambiguous, but still leaning towards good main character. Where they're doing stuff wrong throughout the film, or maybe they have a troubled past, but at the end of the day, they become the good guy. And then we have to talk about
We have,
Padme.
I mean, there's no Star Wars fashion if you ignore Padme at all.
Just, I mean, do we even have the time?
I think, well, I don't say I think. I know, I think, well, it's a toss of whether Padme has more outfits to herself compared to every other costume in Star Wars added together. Like, it's how it feels. I know she's a queen, but sometimes I was like, you guys went just a touch overboard once or twice.
I get the idea of wanting to have your queen and public figure have a new outfit for each and every scene because it does feel very regal and royal.
Yes.
But part of me wonders if a person like Padme would actually have that many outfits and could have new ones created for each event because she seems like she kind of actually cares about the people she represents as a politician.
And the amount of wasted resources
Yeah.
go into it. I
I
wonder how much is maybe legacy things that fit other family members, just like the
That's
current world.
possible. And I mean, it's also possible a lot of the queen outfits are sort of like passed down ceremonial things.
I could definitely see that, especially with a lot
Yeah,
of dresses.
right. So I did find a thing that kind of compiled all of the outfits that are in the movies, not counting anything in like Clone Wars.
We can't add in the animation or it's just too much.
Yeah, we don't have the time. So just look at
Man,
all these good outfits.
how do we even start tackling them?
There's a lot of velvet and a lot of rich deep colors, ignoring a few of them. I feel like Padme is usually put into very rich regal tones, a lot of jewel tones, dark navies, blacks, very rich browns, very luxurious fabrics. Definitely ignore the very white crop top low rise skirt thing that
Ugh,
she wore on Tatooine at one point. And it's like maybe you could argue that like she's in a desert area, white and flowy.
but then exposing the abs like that, yeah. I feel like whenever they're trying to make it be Padme as Padme is when we see a lot more of the flowing tresses and the pastel colors. And then whenever she's at more state functions, we're seeing more of the blues and the purples. And then when she's state function but on display as quote unquote the monarch with capitalization, then we see a lot more of the reds and golds pulled in.
Definitely. And then more outfits. Uh there's some nightgown outfits which like you can't get around that with, she's sleeping.
But
And
they flow so into I want to be Romeo and Juliet.
the star-crossed lovers.
Ugh, they just I was young when these came out and they still bothered me back then. I'm just like, no, the prom hair, the flowing tresses.
There's too much prom hair.
It's too much prom hair.
I also,
The only time I'm okay with it really is the bottom left, with that beautiful like blue crushed velvet robe.
oh, yes. Because I think it's just such a casual look.
Right.
Having the kind of tousled wave curls fits with it. But I definitely also really do not like the second from the top right. It just doesn't seem to fit with anything else they ever put her in. Like it
It's so
doesn't.
out of left field. It's just it feels like somebody decided, oh, she's going to go visit a tribal planet, and therefore we're going to put her in a boho tribal thing as a nod to their culture in a really bad way.
I don't feel like Padme and how they flesh her out in Clone Wars would do that.
Exactly.
It just feels weird. And we have more outfits.
More outfits.
And another really so peak early 2000s midriff thing with
It,
the spiral curls.
that's tied for me. That is
Oh,
tied. The gold one underneath is the worst thing they put her in. In every promo shot, her face looks so uncomfortable. So uncomfortable.
really is. Just it's bad. I think was the blue crop top one eventually cut from the film? Like I think that one showed up in promos, but I think that gets cut.
I don't recall seeing it in scene because how could
Yeah,
you be doing anything other than standing there without having things pop out from that top? I'm not sure.
it's awful all around. And we're going to go to focusing on specific individual outfits. And we have the Naboo invasion dress. And yes, technically in the movie, we see Sabe in the dress. But in my opinion, that means that it's Padme's dress
Of
because
course.
Sabe was disguised as Padme. So it was probably her dress. And if we're sticking to these are ceremonial and are passed down between the queens, then it's hers.
I love this one. This is probably one of my top favorites that she wears.
I love it.
I saw last year at Emerald City Comic Con somebody who had spent the better part of a year recreating this, and it was just amazing. I spent the whole meetup kind of hovering around her, looking at every single detail and
Because there's
how
just so much.
so much like your eye just takes it in as texture, but when you really start diving in, you see there's a different texture on the bottom of her sleeves compared to the netting texture that's at the top of the bodice, compared to the almost lace overlay you get down on the forepart of the bottom. It's just stunning.
And I love the big Italian Renaissance sleeves. Uh, you know that like I like the Italian Renaissance stuff. When I do Renaissance clothing, I really like Italian stuff because I think they just really went extra with it to the point where they had to create laws to tone it down. They're like, you all got out of hand. We have literal laws now on the books that say you can't do that anymore. But just like the contrasting fabrics and the rich colors and then the feathers. Like, I think this is the right way to incorporate historical elements of fashion into a non-historical outfit.
I
Or like
agree.
no, yeah, like knowing why those things work. That like, are you gonna have big ass sleeves? Then you need to balance it somewhere.
You're gonna have the big skirt with the large train, but also balance it out so she doesn't have like the portrait of the painting down there where she doesn't have quite as dramatic of a headdress. It doesn't balance out her sleeves as well. So the addition of the
Yes.
feathers is amazing.
And now we have more historical vibes, but this time more Tudors and English.
Now we move into my
Yes.
my interest level in historical fashion. The conical nature of this would place this closer to, I would say, the 1560s before we start getting into the crazy French farthingale wheel skirts. But that
Yeah.
Those are my favorite because they're like your sleeves. They're just insane. Why? But the beauty of the conical shape of this, the pairing of it with such a sculptural hairdress and hairstyle, the hanging sleeves. Oh, I think my favorite detail about the hanging sleeves is on that back view where you can see there's that amazing like brooch or medallion clipping them together.
Yes.
But because of the nature of hanging sleeves and how they're slit all the way up the front to the shoulder, it doesn't actually impede any arm movement.
And the hair is a little weird, but I think it definitely calls in that sort of structured French hood style, but also making it a little sci-fi because I feel like Padme doesn't get a lot of sci-fi stuff, and Star Wars itself tends to not go for that sort of retro futuristic vibe. But I think that tiny amount is good and sort of plays into the structure of the dress.
And I like it because I feel without getting the hair a little bit more into the strange and unusual, it would fall a little bit too far into historical fashion. So that
Yeah.
pulls it out just enough.
And
Uh,
then, because we can't keep talking about the things we like forever, we're going to the bed. I hate this dress so much. And people love it, but I hate it.
I see
And
so many cosplayers who are
uh,
rhapsodizing about their recreation of this dress, and that's good, and I'm happy for them that they love it, but I hate it so much.
I think the only one that I've seen that like I even kind of liked was a Belle Padme crossover
I can
because
do
the skirt was then put under or put over a hoop skirt. So
that.
it brought back a more historical feel to it and it's balanced things out
The
because
balance on this is so bad.
like you can't have like it looks like it's meant to have all this shape, but it's just hanging there like it's on a hanger.
It's a sad sack of a dress that they put on somebody with a petite frame, but it was maybe it's a legacy dress and it was made for somebody much larger because with a longer torso who's not 5'2". I
Oh
do
yes.
exist in Star Wars, women who are not 5'2". I think
Yes.
one or two,
But
but
oh yeah, that bodice is too long. And I think that's also sort of indicative of the early 2000s is if you look in other stuff, that waistline was so low, but not like into a full drop waist like you had in the 20s that made it very obvious that you were not going for natural. Just something about the 90s and 2000s was like the waist isn't there. Your
well,
waist is kind of like mid hip, right?
it's almost a holdover from 80s, not like the new wave fancy, but the 80s romantic dresses. My
Oh
sister
yeah.
my sister had one prom dress that was a big Cinderella-esque Southern belle almost with like lace and it had a waistline about there. And it's just it's not flattering, it's not good on somebody with as petite a frame as Padme
Yeah.
has.
It
It
just cuts across all your natural lines and just causes a weird separation of your torso and hips. And like if it had just been raised, or even you can see on the historical painting, which is 1640s German, that the peak of the bodice comes down very low, but the sides are very high, which like at the true natural waist, like way up. And that peak helps draw the eye and create a more natural line with still giving some length in the front.
the way they've designed it is almost well because it cuts out any shape that she has. It's infantilizing. It makes me look think she has like the body of a 5-year-old, and it's a very strange thing for a scene that's supposed to be this romantic falling in love picnic. It's a moment of softness and away from all the stresses of politics.
Yeah, like I definitely feel like it's supposed to evoke that diaphanous romantic again, Romeo Juliet star-crossed lovers. Like I think that's why they pulled so many like medieval and Renaissance inspirations into it, but they don't understand what they were pulling in for this. And
Why
if
are
you're
there
gonna,
straps?
yeah, like if you're gonna create big sleeves, they need to have volume or they need to have length. Like your diaphanous stuff needs to flow somewhere, or else it just looks like this. And the weird, like, yeah, the hair cones and coverings and oh, the netting. What is my brain has,
She's got sort of the headband going across. In the
yeah.
in the middle picture where it's just her almost from a profile side, it feels almost very 70s, but not in a way that's a cool callback to the original trilogy 70s designs, just in a bad I'm a flower child with my fluffy peasant dropped shoulder top.
Yeah. Because like you can see that there's definitely some late medieval inspiration there with the hair netting on the sides and a headband with a veil. But I think in the portrait there's movement and shape to it, with the headband curving and being higher up on the forehead so as to not break up that natural line of your face and sort of create this weird like workout headband issue that like it's higher up and there's shape to it. I think the main issue is it just lacks so much shape.
It's one of those dresses that I hate so much that it almost spurs me to go back to practicing figure drawing because I would like
Yes.
to sketch a redesign that maybe stays true to the feeling that they were trying to evoke, but fixes so many things.
And there's spaghetti straps on it, which again feels very early 2000s, but like if it's supposed to be off the shoulder and flowy and romantic, why are there spaghetti straps? Like I get for like real life you might need spaghetti straps on a dress like that, but for the movie you're not in it in real life. So like why?
Is it a matter of that bodice fits so poorly and is not designed for her shape that maybe it was a last minute throw on just so the dress actually felt secure on the actress?
I don't know, maybe.
That's
But
the only pass I can come up with.
yeah, overall this ends up looking, in my opinion, like a Party City Guinevere costume.
Fully agree.
I'm
Fully.
sure they were going for a Guinevere Rome like Juliet thing, but they missed the mark. And then oh nope, skipped ahead.
I was like, you're gonna skip that one, really?
Now this one, the what is it, the fireside dinner dress or whatever. Oh, she looks so uncomfortable. And I
We're a little different on this one. There's some aspects of this one I like.
oh,
It
there's
just
some parts I like, and that
it's
kind of makes it worse for me because there's ugh,
so I when you look at the full with the crazy like feather off the shoulder capelet thing, if you took off the weird scarf, then that version I like.
oh, I do like the cape, and I just wish that they had incorporated it into a full look.
Instead of taking it off and having this weird, I don't know. I love the skirt. The mermaid skirt is with a train is a lovely shape on her.
Yeah, like a fun asymmetrical train, but I feel like the fun skirt shape and the nice feather capelet is just ruined by the weird constricting leather bondage bodice and sleeves and the scarf thing.
The
Like,
scarf, is it supposed to, like, the scarf is so evocative of the gold bikini when she has the collar and chain attached.
I don't know. And like, I feel like their idea was that they wanted her in a sexy outfit because she's going to Anakin to tell him that they can't actually have any sort of relationship and he needs to back off. But then of course, she changes her mind and marries the dude. But like I don't like some of the implications of making it very BDSM like,
Yeah.
and it feels sort of manipulative and gross.
And it doesn't suit her personality.
Yeah, like it doesn't fit the regal structured outfits for politician Padme, and it doesn't fit flowing diaphanous casual Padme, and it's just there, and I just feel like a man looked at, oh yeah, I do have,
Yeah.
apparently Lucas personally helped design this dress, and I rolly eye emoji. I feel like that explains
So
some
many deep
stuff.
sighs. So many deep sighs caused by that. Yeah.
Like there's other characters that might have, like, if Kira had maybe been in something similar to this,
That
but
would have
still modified, I think it would have fit better. Or oh, like if Asajj Ventress had to go to a fancy ball,
yes.
I'm sure she would have worn something like this, but maybe a little bit more practical. Like the skirt would have been slit with shorts underneath. It's There's just so much.
Thanks so much. Can we move on from this one, please?
We
I
got to,
don't
yes.
say
We're
anymore.
still in the bad territory. Just now we're in cultural appropriation. And yeah, the original trilogy, especially Phantom Menace, is terrible about this. And as you can see, one of Padme's Senate gowns is just a direct copy off of a traditional Mongolian royalty dress and outfit.
One
Like
that just pushes over so far into cultural appropriation that I can't stand it. Like,
they don't even take inspiration. It's directly copied. Like the hair, the ornamentation on it, the robe, like the inner dress robes, and then the outer robe with the high shoulder padding. Like this is just a one for one copy with some slight changes to allow for the fabric variation and trim. And like this is not how you copy, or this is not how you take inspiration from historical costuming. This is bad. And especially because it's a white actress and it was like white costume designers. Like if you have people who, if you had like actual Mongolian costumers and designers working on this, like they would know what parts have cultural significance and shouldn't be used and what parts are okay to use and how.
and for me, this even goes one step further, knowing that Mongolia as a whole within China is looked upon as a lesser culture within that culture. So now you're just downtrodden, like you're just stepping down so far and punching down so far by just taking it from them because
You're like, oh well, because we think it's cool.
they're not cultured enough to even like care or complain about us just taking this. So
No, yeah. And it's the same with some of the kimono, like it's too on the nose, and especially with the makeup, that a lot Padme's queen makeup is also very drawn from a lot of geisha geiko mako kind of looks, that combining that makeup style with the headdresses and the super obvious kimono, it's too much. You should have just taken like one part.
they could have just take the makeup because they used that makeup as as a trend and a theme through a lot of her ceremonial outfits. Fine, but yeah, like you said, it's too many parts that are too much the same.
Yep. And next, we have some of the through lines of Padme and Leia.
There's a lot
And
of this that I love that they did. It's fascinating when you look at how each trilogy is sorted out of order. So you see with the way it feeds back on itself in this kind of interesting way.
mhm,
The original trilogy in the middle, and then Padme, who chronologically would come before, but in real life comes after, taking some outfit cues from the original trilogy, and then taking General Leia from an older age, who technically is the same character from the middle, but calls back to the end. I just really like how they
yeah.
did some of those great through lines.
So like this one, this is the peacock dress, which does eventually get cut from the film, but was really heavily used in a lot of promotional images. So we have a lot of photos of it. But you can definitely see like the structured over cape with the slit sleeves and the high collar is definitely reminiscent of.
There's even
And then yeah.
I was gonna say there's even that lovely texture
Oh
that
yes.
photos really pull out the textures between Leia's cloak and then on Padme's gown there that are directly related.
And then we have they definitely try tie things in with the hair, a lot of like braids, and especially more in Clone Wars than I think in the movies. They do put her in white quite often. And I think they're the two ceremonial looks. I feel like they definitely took some inspiration but made Padme's just more dramatic because of the situation it was.
You know, you're when you juxtaposed Leia's ceremonial white dress with this one of Padme, it actually made me like the Padme one more. Because originally, when I look at this Padme one, all I see is sort of a weird silk charmeuse slip dress with a rosette that looks like a nightgown. And then you even pull in more of like that 20s, the big fluffy boudoir style robe. And it bothers me. But then when I see the parallels between the slinky white that we saw in the throne room with Leia, and then of course I'm always going to be a sucker for the big whisk because that's Elizabethan and
Yeah.
fantastic.
Hmm. And then even just some more looks, and especially with Padme's, is this the Geonosian outfit and
Before it,
Leia's Hoth, like the boots, like the detailing on the boots is very similar, just a slightly different color palette, and it looks like Leia's got wedges, whereas Padme just has flat, small heel boots. But I think like that white and cream layering is definitely, in my opinion, supposed to be evocative of a lot of Leia's outfits.
I haven't watched all of the Clone Wars yet. It's not something I grew up with. It's something I started watching a couple of years ago and dabbling in and out of it. But I do love that the Clone Wars makes use of that fantastic white cloak, scarf, cape thing. I don't really
Yeah.
know what to call it. That they pull that one out so much because it's a fantastic look.
Well, and I feel like it fits Padme. It evokes Leia, and then it makes sense for a lot of the situations Padme is in because in the Clone Wars, she's definitely doing more like rough and tumble adventuring stuff. And then we also have another General Leia and one of Padme's little, I think this is another Naboo invasion outfit.
I think this is, yeah, I believe that's similar to the Naboo guard outfit in general. So that's when she's pretending to be one of the handmaidens.
Yeah.
With
And I,
the direct relationship between the desaturated plum and that sort of desaturated navy leather is a really great callback.
yeah, the structured shapes and the metal accents. I think you see that in a lot of Padme's outfits is the chunkier metal accents in places. The various armbands or like neck pieces or like in this case a belt that has that metal. And next up, we have fashionable Ewoks.
Yay! And for that, I'm going to transport myself all the way to Endor.
We have the basic Ewok.
So, with our basic Ewok, I always tend to forget that Wicket is really a child. So, what we see with Wicket is what I would think within Ewok culture is your basic. It's just a hole cut with either a big sheet. You see different variations with Greeman where you've got the same, where you just have a hole, you have a piece of fabric draped over top, and then pieced together to create the circular shape. And then Paplu, poor boy, doesn't really try at all. He just takes that big sheet, drops it on his head, and just, grabs it together with a brooch and calls it.
Yep.
Wow.
And I feel like the fact that it's just a head covering to me indicates that this is a spiritual religious thing, because like it's not covering anything important. It doesn't seem that protective. The materials don't seem like thick enough to offer armor, and it's not covering a whole lot of their bodies. So to me, this is just like an Ewok culture thing.
It definitely is. In reading about Ewok culture, yes, I went on a deep dive the other day. The males typically leave the village when they're of age and live by themselves outside of the village. And as prospective mates are interested in them, they'll come leave them little gifts. And when they're ready to get married, they signify that by moving back into the village to then choose their spouse. Um, which I kind of relate to looking at a lot of these, because I feel like a lot of the Ewoks that we get to see in the movies outside of the Ewok specials are going to be these younger, of marrying age, but still single. And I think it
Yeah.
has a big effect on their fashion.
Oh, and just something from the chat. Uh, Wicket was played by a child actor. Warwick Davis would have been
I think
what he was like 10 or 12, I think.
he was pretty young.
Yeah, so he was pretty young because he still is in uh he appears in some of the sequel trilogy movies. I think he's in the Canto Bite scene at one point. Canto Bite scene. I'm wearing my
You're
lovey
loving.
dress. I don't have the big square hair, but that
It
was
does.
too much. My headphones wouldn't fit.
Your headphones wouldn't have fit with that.
Yes. And we have the fit.
The fit. So let's talk about fit on this. Lumat, when you look at him up close, I love his lips, by the way, but we're not going to talk about physical. We're not going to.
The physical Ewok costumes.
Yes. Um, but he's got such a sweet face. And when you look at his up close shot, it looks like a really nice proportion to him. I feel like he just outgrew his headdress and didn't really size up. Maybe he had a huge growth spurt, because when you look at his full body shot, the proportions are just so terrible for him.
It does feel like it's kind of squeezing him at the chin.
He's just, yeah, I think
Yeah.
shot up too fast and didn't nobody bothered to help him make something more suiting to his new size. Wuta, poor boy, didn't try. He just looks like he has a sad sack looped around his head, like just dropped on his head. Not a fan of him. And Ramba, my husband and I have a disagreement on his fashion. He has the nice interweaving of the leather strap around and a little detail, which you can see on the main picture of him. But I think too much of the time when he's moving, it ends up just looking like another big gathered sack on his head.
Like it's a little too loose and not
Yeah.
fitted in the places that it should be. And then beyond basic.
Beyond basic, those Ewoks who actually take their fashion a little more seriously. Tokat, I love. I love this really heavy blue toned green that he has, the green, a nod to their environment, but he makes it fashion by adding in that rich blue green color. Breath Up from one angle is like, it's whatever. He didn't try, but then he turns his head and you've got that amazing reveal of the pleating on the
Oh
side.
yeah, the good like pleating. It adds a lot of interest to the side.
And it makes it a lot more structural and architectural than we see with most of the Ewok head coverings. Whittle Warwick is Wicket's bigger brother, his older brother. And I like where we see the parallels between Whittle having this, it depends on what scene and what still shots you see, what the color is, but it's kind of a rusty orange. And it's very similar to the rusty orange that we see on Wicket. So just good color branching out between your browns and your grays.
And so I really like Talkit because obviously I like teal. I don't know how well the camera picks up my
Color.
teal hair, but I think it's a good color and it's It definitely deviates from a lot of the other Ewok fashion that can get a little monotone sometimes.
And he's
Like
got that great accent of that light
yeah,
tan tassel pulling it through. Just
and say
good
because
job. Good job.
you need to add little pops of stuff if you're gonna do very neutral heavy outfits.
Which leads us
And
to accessorizing. The thing I love about Chirpa is he's the chief, but he chooses to accessorize with a lot of dried flowers and leaves, which evokes their forest connections. But he just does such a great job with it. Again, we see a really good fit on him, where he does get a little bit of the sack and the bunching around his face, but it primarily stays the same when he moves around, which means he's got great fit.
it's yeah, you want to make sure you have the correct fit. It's gotta snug where it needs to be, loose where it should be. Like
And he
tailoring.
and his is different also as well, that we see a lot more of it draping down low on the shoulders as opposed to just cropping at the shoulder or just a light overlap. Which I feel
Yeah.
is like a way of giving, kind of pulling in that cape thematic, especially with him being the chief. And then we've got our hunters who all like to accessorize with skulls.
I
I think
mean, I love it.
I think there's a good way to do skulls and a not as great way to do skulls. I feel like Leektar is our example of not the best way to do it. He's got a little too much going on.
It's not
Uh,
proportioned well. Like it sticks too far out.
and then it fights with the sheer amount of material he has in his hood. I think it wouldn't be as bad if that hood were reined in
Or if the skull were much shorter and smaller.
or tilted a little bit. It's just a little,
Hmm.
it just feels like it kind of sort of fell on his head and he left it there. I think we see a much better example of accessorizing with skulls between Logray and Thibaut, who are two of the primary warriors. I think Logray is great. He is, if I'm remembering correctly, and I apologize if I have this wrong, I believe he is actually the shaman of the village, which is why he has that fantastic staff. Thibaut is one of the premier warriors of the village. I like that he keeps it simple and he keeps it tight. He has the scarf and he has his horn and he has his bag, and he doesn't have a lot of that extra fabric to flap or scare off his prey.
I would say his scarf is it's very small and tight to the back. Like you really don't see it a huge amount in a lot of those photos.
I feel that helps him sneak through the forest more when he's hunting, creates less of a rustle, less things to catch. Maybe if he ducks down enough, then you have just the skull. It's a little bit more of a camouflage. But good job, bravo.
Love it. All right. Well, I think that is the end of our slideshow. Obviously, there's so much more to talk about in Star Wars fashion, but this was only an hour, so
Thank you for indulging me on my Ewoks, but
we love them.
I felt it was time. We had to find something a little different than Padme.
I would say, yeah, Padme, there's so much to talk about, but I definitely feel like she dominates a lot of the Star Wars fashion. So bringing in something different. Well, thank you everyone for joining us.
I hope
Thank
you
you
found
for coming out.
it entertaining as well.
All right, and at 4 o'clock, which is in about 25 minutes, we have Can You Aim Grenades? Which will mostly just be people roasting Nick about his opinions on aiming grenades in RPGs. So they also have a slideshow. It'll be very fun. So check that one out too. And thank you and goodbye.
Goodbye.